Hey, I'm Imi. I'm a writer and illustrator working in London on my dream project. I'm creating a comic based on my real experiences in urban exploring, and if you don't know what that is, this should give you an idea.
That's disgusting.
Look this way. I'm creating the series to document the development of my comic and life as a comic creator, as well as giving you all an insight into the writing, illustrating, and publishing of a comic book and everything in between. I'm so excited to have you all on this journey. Not bad. It looks awful on camera. Not bad. So today is officially the first day of working on the comic full time. I'm really excited to get started. I've got a lot of my script plans behind me here, except I haven't looked through them for about 3 or so years. There's a lot of versions as well, so I'm a bit nervous to go through them, but excited and interested as well because it's a lot of my writing from 3 years ago, and I've really made an effort to be reading a lot more and writing more. So I'm hoping I've improved a little bit since then. There's also a lot of changes with the characters and the world, so just implementing all those changes into the script over the next few days. So I'm gonna get started with reading through the script again, make some notes, make some changes. I'll go through that with Marcus. Let's go. Going through the scripts, I was kind of horrified how disorganised everything was. I've revisited these a few times over the last few years. So I'll have taken stuff from one storage drive to another and sort of ended up with copies to make sure I didn't delete anything and didn't erase any of my work, but I haven't been through it to properly organise it and make sure there weren't duplicates of everything. So the first task was to go through all the scripts and plans and sort of just consolidate everything into one file. So there's been a lot of name changes for the characters, especially the main character. So we've kind of gone from, well, my Instagram handle, we started and we just sort of reference her as Spider Girl because that's where it all started. I then changed it to Sarah. That's kind of where we had like my initial ideas for a name. But however, I had a really good think about it and I wanted to give her something a bit more like detective-y and unique to her character, so we've actually sort of settled on the name Vivian, except in all my old plans and scripts she's called Sarah, so the grueling thing that I'm doing now is just going through it all and renaming it. And I don't know, tell me if Notion has a feature that you can just find and change the name, but at least on Notion you can't do that, so I'm having to manually do it all. It's a bit long, but we're getting there. I was able to consolidate everything and I had a chance to read through the story as well, and to be honest, I'm really happy with where I left off. As a loose story structure, I'm actually really happy with the script, but I have made a few changes, especially to the first few chapters. I wanted to avoid over-editing, and it's especially easy to edit and keep going and try and make it perfect at the stage where I'm looking over old stuff and renewing it. Over-editing these smaller parts before I've gotten the bigger picture, I think it could really lose its charm, and being hung up on these earlier chapters, it's just going to slow me down and stop me from progressing through the story, which is more important at the moment. But that being said, I have made some changes and I do think these were necessary to just make the story structure clearer, and also adding new characters and making changes to the world since we went over the story plans. And there's still a lot of work to do as I've extended some of the chapters and dropping in lots more hints for the bigger picture and the overarching narrative. As much as I love my home setup, and I really do love it, I live in London and there's just so many places to explore and go out. Like, it can get a bit samey in here having similar conversations every day, so it's quite nice to get out and just overhear and be part of these other conversations with people and strangers that I won't get at home. I can then use those for conversations between my characters later and include those in the comic book. So with that, we're heading to a cafe to work today. We're in a hotel today. It's quite a nice spot, quite quiet, and there's not too many people around, which is nice. So I've got my work with me, got a nice big table all to ourselves, which is good. So I'm using Notion mostly at the moment, and I've just been adding like notes, all across my Notion in the wrong places essentially. So I'm gonna need to sort those out, make sure we've got like a proper story going and not just pieces. And yeah, I feel like we really fleshed out the characters last time I looked at my Notion. We really went over the characters. We built up the like mood boards. I definitely need to start just like sketching out the characters and get really comfortable drawing them. But for today, I really want to work on the story and just get that planned out. I absolutely love working in Notion. I'm no coder and I'm definitely still wrapping my head around it, but on a basic level it offers just so much for organising and cataloguing all my ideas. I've been using it to store all my characters, ideas, thoughts and story structures, any sort of like side stories, character plot, and sort of a glossary as well of different terms, different features of the comic, and maybe maybe situations my character might end up in, and I just list those all so I can come back to it and just pull from it when I need to and I need a bit more inspiration. And because of how useful Notion is, today I'm going to be organising all the thoughts and ideas that I've sort of thrown into it over the last few years, and just making sure it's really clear and concise and I can return to it and actually make the most of this tool when I'm working on the comic. Had a really good session in the cafe today. I'm feeling a lot more confident on the characters and especially the villain. His sort of motivations set up a lot for the storyline. So getting him like really nailed down it's been a struggle for like the past few years of trying to write this. We've had lots of ideas, but nothing that's really like solid and set in stone. And I think today we worked it out. So yeah, very excited to further build on that and structure it and tie it in with all the technical parts of the environment and just furthering his motivations and the conflicts with our other characters. So I really enjoy working in the cafe and working out and about. It definitely makes me feel a lot more creative. It gives me a new space and a new environment to sort of feel a bit more inspired. It does get a bit more draining because it's not as comfy as my chair and my desk, but I do like it, and it's been super sunny today, so it's quite a nice day to be out and working. So a friend of mine has a rowing race today, and so we saw her first one this morning. She's got another race this afternoon, so we're heading that way now. And you might wonder why I'm showing you my friend's rowing competition, but since Lynn, one of my supporting characters, is also a rower, being in this competitive environment is really inspiring, and I hope it can give you an insight too. I love that about these vlogs, being able to share what I'm working on each month and deepening your insight into the comic. Another way I'm hoping to do that is by writing a monthly newsletter. It's something I've been nervously excited to start tackling. I've really been procrastinating getting some posts up on Patreon. It's really been full focus on the comic and video content that I've just really not made time to post on Patreon too. I'm really excited to start putting posts out like this that are sort of like a summary for the month. They'll show you what I've been working on, behind the scenes, what it's like to write a comic, and other kind of practices, inspirations, and tools that I'm finding really useful at the moment. I also want to tuck in a few things like book recommendations, what I'm reading, and if there's any cool places that I visited or shows that I've watched or games that I'm playing. I'll also be doing something similar for July, except this is going to be more of a preview post and tell you what's coming up for Patreon. So whether that's, again, behind the scenes, extra video content, and any other fun downloadable content like wallpapers, artwork, brushes, which I hope you'll enjoy. If you're as excited as I am about the comic and you want to help support the project, please subscribe to me on Patreon. I'll drop a link in the description. The city is a seriously important part of the comic. Everything from the beauty of the skylines to the intricacies of the buildings and structures that Vivian's climbing in the comic. It's important the comic has these tall glass structures as well as brick structures and multi-layers of different interesting structures that Vivian's going to climb around and just really work with parkour as well. Having done parkour and urban exploration, there's just so many different structures that you come across, and nothing is really the same, especially in London. You have these glass structures, but then you have these sloped brick buildings and various ladders and staircases. It's all very important to the journey that you make when you're going up or down these buildings, and that's really important to Vivian's story as well, and it's just going to make the action scenes so much more exciting. For that reason, so I thought I'd head out to a cafe today to get some work done. I thought whilst we're here, we've chosen to come to Brick Lane just because a lot of the architecture and like the railway arches and stuff around this area, kind of heading to Limehouse and Shadwell and Limehouse, really reflects the kind of architecture in the comic. So I'm going to get some work done in the cafe and then going to do a long walk back via Shadwell, Whitechapel, Limehouse, those kind of areas, and get some photos for inspiration as well, which I can then use when I get back. Being rained on. In the EU we have these bottle caps that are attached so they don't get littered, and I saw this the other day, so usually they like dangle, but I saw someone do this, it stays to the side, it's great.
I just getting sludge.
Marcus just made a really good find. So through here we've got the railway tracks and the arches that we've been looking for. They look very good for the comic. We've got all the palisade fences, broken up windows. It's very kind of rough looking. So it could kind of be like one of the entrances Vivian finds in the comic, or even like the way we've stumbled across it now. We might just stumble across this and think like, oh, I wonder where this goes. So it's quite an interesting area, and I'm going to take a couple of pictures and then we'll go. So we've come over to Spitalfields because this area is quite important for the comic in terms of the visual elements of the story, especially like the old London brickwork, meeting the glass skyscrapers and taller city structures of London. There's also the gentrification of the markets in areas like this in Brick Lane, where you have a lot of new business moving in, a lot of new development, and of course the market here is thriving. But unfortunately for a lot of the communities that did live here, a lot of people have had to move out, and this is another element of London that I really want to highlight in my story, just about the slow encroaching development coming from our main nemesis and how that affects Vivian and her friends and her community as well. Then from an urban exploring perspective, these kind of areas are fantastic because you've got all these kind of multi-layered buildings, lots of metal structures on the outside, you've got balconies, you've got staircases, and they make it very accessible to get a really good view of the city without having to be directly in the city as well. And a lot safer, especially in slightly more business residential areas. There's a lot less police presence. So you find these really great locations that are quite accessible due to the structures, and so you get these really good views, especially like at sunset, and it's glinting off the buildings. I can tell you firsthand, like it looks amazing. For a lot of us, especially those who focus more on photography, when you're on these buildings that are just outside of the city centre, you really get a good view of the skyline of London, and it can look really good. Sorry, my mouth is cold now. There did used to be a really nice blossom tree here, but unfortunately now they've paved it with concrete. So I've had a really good wander around, and I've found a lot of places where we wanted to get photos that really represent the visual elements in the comic. So with all that walking, I'm definitely really tired now. Vans aren't great for walking, and I've run out of bubble tea to keep me going. But I'm really happy with the photos that I got today, and I think they're going to be really useful for the comic. So we're going to head back and upload all the footage, and I'm going to get a bit more drawing done before the end of the day. So this month, if I'm being completely honest, it's definitely been a rockier start than I could have hoped for. There's been a fair few interruptions, and actually working for myself and holding myself accountable has been a lot more challenging than I expected. That being said, I've made some really significant progress. The story, the plan, and the general structure of the comic. The characters and the story are feeling way more fleshed out. Each episode is almost ready for paneling, and honestly, this is so much more progress than I've made in the last few years. Really, really excited just to get drawing, to get this out there. I think I'm really getting into the flow of things now, and there's so much more to come. So if you want to stay up to date and you want to follow the journey of creating this comic book with me, get subscribed at ImiaLust, and if you want to go the extra mile, go check out my Patreon to support the development of the comic. See you in the next one.